Before we begin the story, let us know where you're watching from by leaving a comment below. If you enjoy this video, don't forget to like and subscribe. Have a wonderful day. Enjoy the story, everyone. Manhattan, New York, present day. The champagne was still fizzing on my tongue when I spotted my ex-fiancé, Ethan, weaving through the crowd at the plaza with that expression I knew all too well, the same one he'd worn when he discovered I'd forgotten to mention I didn't want kids, or when I'd revealed I preferred Netflix to the opera, or when, well, the list was embarrassingly long. Perfect. Ethan Harrington IV, because of course he had to have a Roman numeral in his name, was exactly 50 feet away from me, cutting through the wedding reception like a shark who'd caught the scent of blood. And me? I was pressed against the bar in my best sapphire blue dress, armed with champagne and absolutely zero good judgment. 45 feet. Please tell me you have an escape plan. I whispered to my cousin Ava, who was busy adjusting her own bridal bouquet. What plan? You're the one who decided to show up solo to my wedding after breaking up with Ethan 3 weeks ago. 40 feet. He'd stopped to shake hands with Uncle Richard. He took a shaky breath. I needed time to think. And what exactly did you think about? 35 feet. Ethan was moving again, wearing that forced smile he used when he wanted to discuss our future together. That maybe I'm not the kind of woman who gets married at 28 just because it's expected. Sophie, you literally have 1 minute before he gets here. I scanned the ballroom desperately. The reception was gorgeous. Ava had impeccable taste, but there was nowhere to run. The terrace was packed, the stairs blocked by photographers, and then I saw him, in the darkest corner of the ballroom, leaning against the wall like he was part of the architecture, stood the most intimidating man I'd ever seen in my life. Tall, really tall, with dark hair and scruff that should have looked messy but was devastatingly attractive instead. His tuxedo clearly wasn't rented, but his posture screamed, "Don't mess with me." More importantly, Ethan was actively avoiding him. Actually, everyone was. 20 feet. Ava, I whispered. Who's that guy? She followed my gaze and went pale. That's Lucas. Lucas Wolf. The name sounded familiar, but I couldn't place it. And why is everyone avoiding him like he has the plague? Because he's complicated. Very complicated. Soph, whatever you're thinking, don't. 15 feet. Ethan had dismissed Uncle Richard and was heading straight for us. Thanks, 'cause I owe you one. Before Ava could stop me, I was crossing the ballroom toward the most feared man at the party. My Louboutin heels clicked determinedly against the marble, and I prayed my courage would last at least until I reached the other side. Lucas Wolf looked up as I approached. His eyes were dark, almost black, and they assessed me from head to toe in 2 seconds that felt like a lifetime. Excuse me, I said, getting close to him. Too close for casual conversation. I need a favor. He tilted his head slightly, and I noticed a small scar along his left jawline. What kind of favor? His voice was deep with a slight rasp that did things to my stomach. I need you to be my boyfriend for the next 5 minutes. Lucas blinked once. Slowly. Interesting approach. I glanced over my shoulder. Ethan was 10 feet away and closing fast. Please, I'll explain later, but right now I really need you to. He followed my gaze, spotted Ethan, and something shifted in his expression. A small, dangerous smile curved his lips. He the problem? He is the problem. Lucas pushed off from the wall and, without warning, placed a hand on my waist, pulling me close, very close, close enough that I could smell his cologne, something expensive and completely masculine. How much are you willing to pay for 5 minutes of convincing performance? Before I could answer, I felt a hand on my shoulder. Sophie, shoot. I turned slowly, still in the circle of Lucas's arms, and smiled with all the naturalness I could muster. Ethan, what a coincidence running into you here. Ethan looked from me to Lucas and back again, clearly confused. I thought we could talk about us. Us? Lucas spoke for the first time, and his voice had a quality that made Ethan take a step back. Sorry, but who are you, exactly? Ethan Harrington. And you are her boyfriend. Lucas's hand tightened slightly on my waist, and I leaned into him, trying to look convincing. Lucas, this is Ethan. An acquaintance. Acquaintance? Ethan looked genuinely shocked. Sophie, we were engaged for 2 years. Keyword, were, I replied, feeling a courage that definitely wasn't mine. Maybe it was the champagne. Or maybe it was the way Lucas was holding me. Like nothing in the world could hurt me while I was there. You can't be serious. 3 weeks ago, you said you needed time to think. And I thought. Lucas pulled me even closer, and I felt him lower his head to whisper in my ear. Relax. He don't bite. Except the way he said it made my stomach flip. Sophie, Ethan continued, be reasonable. We have history. We have plans. You can't throw it all away because of he gestured vaguely at Lucas. Whatever this is. And that's when I realized two things. First, Ethan was talking about me like I was an investment he didn't want to lose. Second, Lucas was tense as a coiled spring. Look, Ethan, I said, my voice coming out steadier than I'd expected. This has a name, and this treats me like a person, not like an item on some life checklist. You're being dramatic, and you're being you. Lucas chuckled softly, and the sound vibrated against my ear. I think she made herself pretty clear, he said to Ethan. You should find someone else to bother. I'm sorry, but I don't think you understand the situation. Sophie and I, Ethan. My voice came out sharper than I'd intended. Stop. He blinked, clearly surprised by my tone. We don't have an us anymore. We don't have plans, and we definitely don't have a future. So, please, just stop. For a moment, the ballroom fell silent. Well, except for the band, still playing The Way You Look Tonight in the background, completely oblivious to the drama unfolding. Ethan looked from me to Lucas one more time, and I could see the exact moment he decided I wasn't worth the effort anymore. Fine, he said, adjusting his tuxedo, but when this theater is over, you'll realize you made a mistake. Then he turned and walked away, leaving only the scent of his expensive cologne lingering in the air. I waited until he disappeared into the crowd before stepping away from Lucas. I immediately missed the warmth of his arms, which was concerning. Thank you, I said, smoothing down my dress. You literally saved me. You're welcome. We stood in silence for a moment. Lucas had returned to his original position against the wall, but his eyes were still on me. So, I said, trying to break the tension, now that my personal drama is over, can I buy you a drink as a thank you? I don't drink at weddings. Personal policy. Survival policy. I laughed, and for a second, I thought I saw a real smile cross his face. Well, thank you anyway. Lucas Wolfe, Sophie Carter, and sorry for dragging you into my drama. It was educational. Educational? I learned you have terrible taste in men. I snorted. Hey, you don't even know me. I know enough. Something about the way he said that made me stop laughing. What do you mean? But before he could answer, Ava appeared beside us like a whirlwind of pink silk. Sophie Marie Carter. Have you completely lost your mind? Ava. Calm down. I can explain. Do you know who he is? She whispered, grabbing my arm. Do you know what he does? I looked from Ava to Lucas, who was watching our conversation with an amused expression. Not exactly, but he's one of the most famous criminal defense attorneys in New York. He defends people who, she lowered her voice even more, who do terrible things. Ava, you're being dramatic. Dramatic? Sophie, his last client was that businessman who was acquitted of all charges. Lucas interrupted calmly. Due to lack of evidence, Ava turned red. Well, that doesn't mean, what? That I don't do my job properly? Or that you prefer a justice system where people are considered guilty until proven innocent? Well, Ava, I said gently, shouldn't you be taking care of your guests instead of interrogating mine, yours? Sophie, you've known each other for 5 minutes. And they were 5 very productive minutes. Lucas chuckled again, and I felt that strange warmth in my chest. Look, Ava said, clearly frustrated. I'm just trying to protect you. After Ethan, maybe you should take a break from the whole relationship world. Maybe I should make my own decisions. She sighed. Fine. But if you need anything, I'll be inside, trying not to have a panic attack about the fact that my cousin is flirting with the man who gives every prosecutor in Manhattan nightmares. Am I flirting? I asked after she left. Are you? I don't know. Maybe? I laughed, feeling my cheeks warm. Sorry, I'm not usually like this. Like what? Impulsive, dramatic, using dangerous strangers as shields against persistent ex-fiancé. And how are you usually? The question caught me off guard. How was I usually? Planned, I said finally. Cautious. Boring. Doesn't seem boring. You should meet me on a random Tuesday. Maybe I should. Something about the way he said that made my heart race. Lucas, can I ask you something? You can try. Why did you come to this wedding? You're clearly not enjoying yourself. Everyone's avoiding you. And you said you don't drink at weddings. He was quiet for a long moment, looking at the party happening across the ballroom. The groom's father owes me a favor, he said finally. A very big favor. And you're collecting by watching his son's wedding? I'm collecting by being seen at his son's wedding. There's a difference. What difference? Lucas looked directly into my eyes, and for the first time since I'd met him, his expression was completely serious. The difference between appearing civilized and actually being civilized. Before I could ask what that meant, the band stopped playing, and the DJ announced it was time for the newlyweds' first dance. Well, I said, watching Ava and her husband walk to the dance floor, that's my cue to leave, before someone asks why I came alone. You don't have to leave. I don't dance with me. What? One dance. You owe me that much, don't you? I owe you 5 minutes of convincing performance. That was at least 10. I laughed. Are you charging interest now? I'm renegotiating the contract. A slow song was starting, and other people were joining the newlyweds on the floor. Lucas, I'm not sure that's a good idea. Why not? Because you're dangerous. Am I? Everyone here seems to think so. And you? What do you think? I looked at him, really looked at the way his dark eyes watched me like I was an interesting puzzle, at how his shoulders filled out that tuxedo perfectly, at the small scar on his jaw that made me want to know the story behind it. I think you're the kind of dangerous that might be worth it. He extended his hand. One dance, Sophie, and then, against all my better judgment, I put my hand in it. 2 weeks later, Manhattan, New York. I should have known I was in trouble when I caught myself checking my phone every 10 minutes, hoping for a text that never came. Lucas Wolf, as it turned out, was not the type of man who sent good morning messages or asked about your day. He was the type who disappeared after one dance, one perfect, devastating dance that had left me dizzy and completely off balance and made you wonder if the entire evening had been a fever dream. You're doing it again, said my best friend, Chloe, sliding an iced coffee across the small table at our favorite cafe in Soho. Doing what? That thing where you stare at your phone like it personally insulted your entire family tree? I flipped the phone face down on the distressed wood table and wrapped my hands around the cold cup. The condensation felt good against my palms. I'm not staring, honey. You've checked that thing 6 times since we sat down 5 minutes ago. Maybe I'm expecting an important work email. Chloe raised one perfectly sculpted eyebrow, a skill I'd envied since college. At 11 a.m. on a Saturday from the marketing firm that you already run like a military operation. I took a long sip of my iced vanilla latte and didn't answer. Outside, Soho was doing its Saturday thing. Tourists with cameras, street vendors hawking handmade jewelry, couples browsing the boutiques that lined the cobblestone streets. It was one of my favorite neighborhoods in Manhattan. All cast-iron architecture and independent shops, and the kind of creative energy that made you believe anything was possible today. It just made me feel restless. Okay, Chloe said, settling back in her wrought iron chair with the determination of someone about to perform an intervention. Spill. There's nothing to spill. Sophie Marie Carter. I've known you since we were freshmen at Columbia and spent an entire semester convinced we were going to marry the guys from One Direction. I know when you're obsessing over a man. I'm not obsessing. Then why do you keep checking your phone like it holds the secrets of the universe? Because maybe I am a little obsessed. Chloe's green eyes lit up like she'd just won the lottery. I knew it. Who is he? Please tell me it's not Ethan trying to weasel his way back into your life. Heaven. No, it's... I paused, realizing I didn't even know how to explain Lucas Wolf to someone who hadn't been there. Remember Ava's wedding? The one where you disappeared for like an hour and came back looking like you'd been struck by lightning. That wedding? I didn't disappear for an hour. Sophie, you were gone so long I started planning your funeral. Ava was ready to send out search parties. I laughed, despite myself. I was on the terrace for an hour. Doing what? Dancing. Chloe leaned forward, her red hair catching the sunlight streaming through the cafe's large windows. Dancing with who? This guy named Lucas Wolf. And? And what? Sophie, you've been staring at your phone for 2 weeks. Like you're waiting for the president to call. There has to be more than just dancing. I sighed, pushing a strand of my dark blonde hair behind my ear. He's complicated. Complicated how? Like he's married complicated? Or he lives with his mother complicated? Or he collects vintage dolls complicated? Complicated like he's a criminal defense attorney who apparently gives every prosecutor in Manhattan nightmares. And everyone at the wedding was avoiding him like he had some contagious disease. Chloe's eyes widened. Lucas Wolf. Wait, why does that name sound familiar? I don't know. But Ava seemed to think he was some kind of legal legend. Hold on. Chloe pulled out her phone and started typing furiously. Lucas Wolf. Criminal Defense Attorney, New York. Her eyes got progressively wider as she scrolled. Oh, my sweet summer child. What? She turned her phone toward me, and I found myself looking at a photo of Lucas in what appeared to be a newspaper article. He looked just as intimidating in print as he had in person. Maybe more so. He's not just any criminal defense attorney, Chloe said, her voice dropping to a whisper. Even though we were surrounded by the typical Saturday cafe crowd, he's the criminal defense attorney, the one they call when cases are impossible to win, the one who's never lost a high-profile case, the one who what? The one who charges more per hour than most people make in a month. I stared at the photo. Even in black and white newsprint, Lucas's dark eyes seemed to look right through me. That doesn't make him a bad person, I said weakly. No, but it makes him dangerous in ways you're probably not equipped to handle. What's that supposed to mean? Chloe put her phone away and leaned across the table. Soph, you're the sweetest person I know. You volunteer at animal shelters. You cried during Hallmark commercials. You once drove 3 hours to return a wallet you found because it had family photos in it. Your point? My point is that guys like Lucas Wolfe eat girls like you for breakfast. Something about the way she said it made my spine straighten. Girls like me? You know what I mean? Actually, I don't. Enlighten me. Chloe seemed to realize she'd stepped in something I didn't mean. No, please. Tell me exactly what kind of girl I am. Sophie, I was just trying to protect. From what exactly? From a man who was nothing but respectful to me. From someone who helped me when I needed help? From a person I had one conversation with 2 weeks ago? From someone who could hurt you? And you think I'm too weak to handle that? I think you're too good to handle that. We stared at each other across the small table. The cafe continued its Saturday bustle around us. Espresso machines hissing, conversations flowing in multiple languages, the clink of cups and saucers, but between Chloe and me, the air had gone still. I'm sorry, Chloe said finally. That came out wrong. Did it, Sophie? You're one of the strongest people I know. You built your own business from nothing. You left Ethan when everyone told you that you were crazy. You make decisions that terrify other people and somehow always land on your feet. But this guy, there are articles about him. Soph, not just in legal journals, in magazines, about cases that made national news, about clients who, she trailed off, who? What? Who were accused of things that would keep you awake at night? I took another sip of my latte. Mostly to have something to do with my hands. Accused, not convicted, because he's that good at his job, or because they were innocent. Sophie, Chloe, I danced with him. I didn't agree to marry him, but you want to see him again? It wasn't a question, and we both knew it. Maybe, I admitted, and he hasn't called. No. Or texted. No. Or sent flowers or shown up at your office or done any of the things that normal guys do when they're interested. Apparently not. Chloe reached across the table and covered my hand with hers. Honey, maybe that's your answer right there. I looked down at our joined hands. Chloe had been my best friend for almost a decade. She'd been there through my disastrous college relationships, my early career struggles, the entire Ethan debacle. She knew me better than almost anyone. So why did I feel like she was completely wrong about this? What if I told you, I said slowly, that dancing with him was the first time in months, maybe years, that I felt like myself? What do you mean? I mean that for 2 years with Ethan, I was becoming someone I didn't recognize. Someone who said the right things and wore the right clothes and smiled at the right people. Someone who was perfect on paper but miserable in real life. Chloe squeezed my hand, and then I spent 10 minutes with Lucas Wolfe. And suddenly I remembered what it felt like to be spontaneous. To take a risk. To do something just because I wanted to. Not because it was expected, or safe, or appropriate. Sophie, I know it sounds crazy. I know he's probably not going to call. I know he's complicated and dangerous and completely wrong for me on every level that matters. But I can't stop thinking about the way he looked at me, like he saw something in me that I'd forgotten was there. Chloe was quiet for a long moment, studying my face with the intensity of someone trying to solve a particularly difficult puzzle. You're really hung up on this guy, she said finally. Apparently, so. And you have no way to contact him. None whatsoever. And you're just going to sit here checking your phone every 10 minutes until he possibly decides to get in touch. I paused, realizing how pathetic that sounded when she said it out loud. I don't know what else to do. Chloe grinned suddenly. and I knew that expression. It was the same one she'd worn when she'd convinced me to go skydiving for her 25th birthday, or when she'd talked me into adopting my cat, Jasper, from the shelter. Even though my apartment had a no-pets policy. What? I asked suspiciously. I have an idea. Chloe. No. Chloe. Yes. Whatever you're thinking, the answer is absolutely not. You haven't even heard it yet. I don't need to hear it. I can see it on your face, and it's a terrible idea. How do you know it's terrible if you don't know what it is? Because you have a very specific expression that you get when you're about to suggest something that will either get us arrested or end up on social media or both. This is different. How? Because this time it might actually work. I stared at her, already knowing I was going to regret asking, work how? Chloe pulled out her phone again, fingers flying across the screen. What's the name of your marketing firm? You know the name of my marketing firm. Carter Creative Solutions. Chloe, what are you? And you specialize in rebranding campaigns for small businesses, right? Among other things, yes, but... And you're always looking for new clients, Chloe. I swear if you're about to suggest what I think you're about to suggest, Lucas Wolf probably has a social media presence, right? Maybe a website that could use updating. All lawyers have websites. No. Think about it. You're a professional. He's a professional. It would be perfectly reasonable for you to reach out about potential business opportunities. Absolutely not. It's not disparate. It's networking. It's transparent and embarrassing. And I will not, Sophie. Chloe leaned forward, her expression suddenly serious. When was the last time you took a real risk? I take risks all the time. I own my own business. Business risks don't count. I'm talking about personal risks, heart risks. When was the last time you did something that scared you because the potential payoff was worth it? I opened my mouth to answer and realized I couldn't. Before Ethan, Chloe continued, you were fearless. You moved to New York with nothing but a suitcase and a dream. You started your company in your studio apartment. You said yes to things that terrified you because you knew that's how you grow. This is different. How? Because this is about a man. So I spent 2 years letting a man make me smaller. I'm not about to start chasing after another one. Sophie, look at me. I met her eyes reluctantly. You're not chasing, you're choosing. There's a difference, is there? Chasing is desperate. Chasing is trying to convince someone to want you. Choosing is deciding that someone is worth the risk and then taking action. I sat back in my chair, feeling suddenly exhausted. What if he thinks I'm crazy? What if he thinks you're brave? What if he says no? What if he says yes? I stared out the window at the people walking by, couples holding hands, friends laughing over shared jokes, strangers hurrying past with purposes I could only imagine, all of them taking small risks every day, making choices that could lead to something wonderful or something terrible, but choosing to try anyway. This is insane, I said finally. The best things usually are. I looked back at Chloe, who was watching me with the kind of patient hope that only best friends could manage. If I do this, and I'm not saying I will, but if I do this, and it backfires spectacularly, you're buying my drinks for a month. Deal. And if he thinks I'm a crazy stalker, you're never allowed to say, I told you so. Ao sudeo. And if this somehow works out, you get to be maid of honor at my wedding. Chloe laughed. Now you're getting ahead of yourself. Am I? I pulled out my phone, my finger hovering over the Google search bar. One search, one website, one carefully crafted professional email that might lead absolutely nowhere or might lead to everything. You know what, I said, typing Lucas Wolf Law Firm into the search bar. Maybe it's time I remembered how to be fearless. Chloe grinned and raised her iced coffee in a toast. To being fearless. To being completely insane. I corrected, but I clinked my cup against hers anyway. And then, before I could change my mind, I started typing, Monday morning, Sophie's office, Tribeca. I stared at the email draft on my laptop screen for the 15th time in 2 hours, my cursor blinking mockingly at the end of the subject line. Marketing Services Proposal. Wolf & Associates. Delete, delete, delete. Marketing Consultation Opportunity. Carter Creative Solutions. Also terrible. Professional Services Inquiry. Boring. Generic. The kind of email that gets sent straight to spam folders. My office, a converted loft space in Tribeca that I'd spent 3 years making perfect, felt smaller than usual this morning. Exposed brick walls lined with my favorite campaigns. Floor-to-ceiling windows that usually made me feel inspired. My lucky succulent garden thriving on the windowsill. Today, it all felt like it was closing in on me. I'd been here since 7 a.m., which was ridiculous even by my standards. I'd told myself it was because I had a presentation for a new client at 10, but the truth was I couldn't sleep. Every time I'd closed my eyes, I'd seen Lucas Wolf's face. The way he'd looked at me during that dance. The way he'd disappeared without a trace afterward. My phone buzzed. A text from Chloe. "Did you send the email yet?" I typed back. "Working on it. Sophie, it's 9 a.m. How long does it take to write a professional email?" Longer than you'd think when your hands shake every time you try to type the recipient's name. I'd found his law firm's website easily enough. Wolf and Associates occupied 3 floors of a building in Midtown, specialized in high-profile criminal defense, and had a client list that read like a who's who of people you definitely didn't want to meet in a dark alley. Their website was sleek but cold, all sharp lines and intimidating black and white photos that screamed, "We are very expensive and very good at what we do." What it didn't scream was, "We need help with our marketing," which was exactly the problem. I pushed back from my desk and walked to the window, coffee mug in hand. Down on the street, Monday morning was in full swing. Business people striding purposefully toward the subway. Tourists already consulting maps. Delivery trucks navigating the narrow streets with impressive skill. Normal people doing normal things, none of them agonizing over whether to send an email to a man they danced with at a wedding. My assistant's voice came through the intercom. "Sophie, your 10 is here." Right. The presentation, the actual work that paid my bills and kept my business running. I straightened my shoulders, smoothed down my burgundy blazer, and tried to look like a competent professional instead of a woman having a mild breakdown over an unsent email. "Send them in, Emma." The next hour passed in a blur of brand strategy, discussions, and demographic analysis. The client, a small organic bakery looking to expand, was exactly the kind of business I loved working with. Passionate owners, great product, clear vision for growth. Under normal circumstances, I would have been completely engaged. Instead, I found myself thinking about the way Lucas's hand had felt against my back during that dance. "Miss Carter?" I snapped back to attention. "I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?" The bakery owner, a woman in her 50s with flour still under her fingernails, was looking at me with concern. I asked about timeline. How long would something like this take? Right, timeline. I flipped through my notes, trying to remember what we'd been discussing. For a complete rebrand with website redesign and social media strategy, we're looking at roughly 6 to 8 weeks. Depending on revisions and approval processes, that sounds perfect. We're hoping to launch the new look before the holiday season. Absolutely doable. I made a note. Then looked up with what I hoped was a confident smile. "I'll have a detailed proposal and contract to you by end of business tomorrow." After they left, I sat alone in my office, staring at the email draft that was still open on my screen. The cursor continued its relentless blinking, judging me for my cowardice. My phone rang. Unknown number. "Carter Creative Solutions. This is Sophie." "Miss Carter." The voice was unmistakable, deep, measured, with that slight rasp that had haunted my dreams for 2 weeks. I nearly dropped the phone. "Lucas." His name came out as barely more than a whisper. "I understand you've been trying to reach me." I looked at my computer screen in confusion. The email was still sitting there, unsent. What? My assistant received a call this morning. Someone inquiring about marketing services for our firm. My blood turned to ice water. "Oh no. Oh no. 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 Is there a problem?" I closed my eyes and tried to remember how to breathe. Chloe had called his office while I was agonizing over email drafts. "I can explain," I said, though I wasn't entirely sure how. "I'm listening. Think, Sophie. Think like the professional you're supposed to be, not like a woman whose best friend just sabotaged her life." "I run a marketing consultancy," I said, attempting to sound calm and businesslike. "After we met at the wedding, I did some research on your firm, and I noticed some opportunities for brand enhancement. I thought it might be worth exploring whether there was a mutual business interest." Silence on the other end of the line, long enough that I started wondering if he'd hung up. "Interesting," he said finally. "Is it? Most people who research my firm come away wanting nothing to do with me. You came away wanting to work with me." "Well, I'm not most people." "No," he said, and something in his voice made my stomach flutter. "You're not." More silence. I gripped the phone tighter. "So," I said, because apparently I'd lost all sense of self-preservation, Are you interested in marketing services? There was something in the way he asked the question that made me think we weren't just talking about marketing services anymore. In exploring possibilities, I said carefully, possibilities, professional possibilities. Of course, professional. I could hear the smile in his voice. And it made me bold in a way that probably wasn't smart. Would you like to meet? I asked. To discuss the professional possibilities. When are you free for lunch today? The words were out of my mouth before I could stop them. Lunch today was insane. I had 3 client calls this afternoon, a proposal to finish, and exactly 0 preparation for whatever this conversation was about to become. I could be free, he said. Great. I know a place in Midtown. Quiet. Good for business discussions. Business discussions. Exactly. Send me the address. I'll see you at 12:30. The line went dead, and I stared at my phone in disbelief. I had a lunch meeting with Lucas Wolf in 3.5 hours. A professional lunch meeting that I'd somehow managed to arrange without sending a single email or making a single plan. My hands were shaking as I typed a quick text to Chloe. You called his office, didn't you? The response came back immediately. You're welcome. How did it go? I have a lunch meeting with him in 3 hours. What? That's amazing. That's terrifying. Same thing. What are you going to wear? I looked down at my burgundy blazer and black pants. Professional, safe, boring. Something that says I'm a competent businesswoman who definitely didn't have her best friend call his office because she was too scared to send an email. Sophie, you've got this. Just be yourself. Myself got us into this mess. Yourself is also about to have lunch with the hottest lawyer in Manhattan. I laughed despite my panic. Chloe, I could lose my professional credibility over this, or you could gain a lot more than that. After hanging up, I spent the next hour researching everything I could about Wolf and Associates, their case history, their client base, their current online presence. If I was going to pretend this was about business, I needed to actually know what I was talking about. What I found was impressive and slightly terrifying. Lucas Wolf wasn't just a criminal defense attorney. He was the criminal defense attorney, the one reporters called when they needed quotes about high-profile cases, the one other lawyers referred their impossible clients to, the one who charged fees that most people couldn't pronounce, let alone afford. His firm's website was professionally designed but utterly soulless, clean, corporate, intimidating, no personality, no warmth, nothing that suggested the people behind it were actual human beings rather than legal robots. From a marketing perspective, it was actually terrible. From a personal perspective, it told me exactly nothing about the man I danced with 2 weeks ago. By 11:30, I'd changed clothes twice, finally settling on a navy blue shirt dress that split the difference between professional and approachable, and practiced my pitch in the mirror until I sounded almost convincing. I arrived at the restaurant 10 minutes early because that's what professional people did. It was a small Italian place in Midtown that I'd chosen specifically because it was quiet, had good lighting for business discussions, and served excellent pasta, in case I needed carbohydrates to get through whatever this was about to become. The hostess seated me at a table for 2 near the window, and I ordered a sparkling water while I waited, and checked my phone and waited some more. At exactly 12:30, the door opened, and Lucas Wolf walked in. If I'd thought he was intimidating in a tuxedo, he was absolutely devastating in a perfectly tailored charcoal gray suit. Every head in the restaurant turned as he walked past, and I couldn't blame them. He moved with the kind of confidence that came from never having to doubt whether you belonged in a room. His eyes found mine across the restaurant, and that smile, the same small, dangerous smile from the wedding, curved his lips. Sophie, he said as he reached the table, and the way he said my name made my professional composure wobble dangerously. Lucas, thank you for meeting me on such short notice. He sat down across from me, and I was struck again by how dark his eyes were, almost black with an intensity that made me feel like he could see straight through whatever facade I was trying to maintain. So, he said after the waiter had taken his drink order scotch neat at 12:30 inches the afternoon, because apparently that was the kind of man he was. Tell me about these marketing opportunities you've identified. Right. Business. I could do business. I opened the portfolio I'd brought and pulled out printouts of his firm's website, alongside examples of more engaging legal marketing campaigns I'd researched that morning. Your current online presence is, I paused, trying to find a diplomatic way to say completely awful. Terrible, he suggested. One eyebrow raised in amusement. I was going to say underutilized, but yes, essentially terrible. He laughed, and the sound was warm and rich, and completely at odds with his intimidating reputation. "Don't hold back, Miss Carter. Tell me how you really feel." "All right." I leaned forward, warming to my topic. "Your website looks like it was designed by someone who actively wanted to scare away potential clients. It's cold, impersonal, and gives absolutely no sense of who you are as people, or why someone should trust you with their legal problems. And that's bad for business. It's terrible for business. Yes, you want to project competence and professionalism, but you also want to project humanity. People hire lawyers when they're scared, confused, desperate. They need to believe that you're not just skilled. They need to believe that you care. And you think our website doesn't convey that? Your website conveys that you're a bunch of robots who happen to be very expensive robots." Lucas was quiet for a moment, studying the materials I'd spread across the table. "What would you do differently?" he asked finally. "Everything." I pulled out my phone and showed him the website for another law firm I'd researched. "Look at this. Same level of expertise, same caliber of cases, but see how they've humanized their approach. Client testimonials, attorney bios that actually tell you something about them as people, case studies that focus on outcomes rather than just legal precedents. And you think this would work for us? I think it would transform your business." "How?" I took a breath, realizing I was about to make the pitch of my professional life to a man I'd been fantasizing about for 2 weeks. "Right now, your firm only gets clients who are referred by other lawyers or who are desperate enough to seek you out despite your intimidating online presence. But there's a whole market of people who need high-quality legal representation and would choose you if they felt like you were approachable. We don't want to be approachable. We want to be feared." "Why?" The question seemed to surprise him. "Because fear is respect." "No, it's not. Fear is fear. Respect is something entirely different." "Explain." I leaned back in my chair, trying to organize my thoughts. This was the part where I either impressed him with my insights or revealed myself to be completely out of my depth. "Fear gets you clients who have no other options," I said finally. "Respect gets you clients who choose you because they believe you're the best. Fear makes people hire you despite your reputation. Respect makes people hire you because of it." Lucas was quiet for a long moment, his dark eyes fixed on my face with an intensity that made it hard to breathe. "Interesting theory," he said finally. "It's not a theory. It's marketing psychology. And you think you could help us achieve this respect?" "I think I could help you show people who you really are, instead of hiding behind this fortress of intimidation you've built." "What makes you think we're hiding?" The question hung in the air between us, and I realized we weren't talking about marketing anymore. Maybe we never had been. "Everyone hides," I said softly. "The question is whether what you're hiding is worth revealing." Our eyes met across the table, and for a moment, the restaurant, the other diners, the clinking of silverware, the hum of conversation all faded away. It was just him and me and this strange electric tension that had been building since the moment I'd grabbed his arm at the wedding. "Sophie," he said, and my name sounded different in his voice now, less professional, more personal. "Yes? This isn't really about marketing, is it?" I could have lied. I could have insisted that this was purely professional, that I was just a businesswoman looking for a new client, that Chloe's phone call had been nothing more than aggressive networking. Instead, I met his eyes and told the truth. "No," I said, "it's not. What is it about?" "I don't know yet." He smiled then, not the dangerous smile from the wedding, but something warmer, more real. "Neither do I," he said, "but I'd like to find out. Is that a yes to the marketing proposal?" "That's a yes to whatever this is." The waiter appeared at our table, clearly expecting us to order lunch, but I wasn't sure I could eat anything with my stomach doing gymnastics routines. "Should we order?" Lucas asked. "Actually," I said, surprising myself, "would you like to get out of here? Where did you have in mind?" "I don't know. Somewhere we can figure out what this is without pretending it's about business." Lucas signaled for the check, left money on the table for our drinks, and stood up. "Lead the way, Sophie Carter." And for the second time in 2 weeks, I found myself taking a leap of faith with a man who was absolutely, completely wrong for me in every way that mattered. Except for all the ways that he might be exactly right. Monday afternoon, Central Park. "So," Lucas said as we walked along the winding path through Central Park, "tell me about Sophie Carter when she's not trying to revolutionize legal marketing." I glanced at him sideways. He'd loosened his tie and rolled up his sleeves, transforming from intimidating attorney to something almost approachable. The afternoon sun filtered through the trees, casting shifting patterns of light and shadow across his face. and I found myself momentarily distracted by the way it highlighted the sharp line of his jaw. "That's a dangerous question," I said, stepping around a jogger who shot us an annoyed look for walking too slowly in his path. "Why dangerous?" "Because the real Sophie Carter is significantly less impressive than the professional version." "I doubt that." We'd been walking for 20 minutes since leaving the restaurant, our conversation flowing with an ease that should have been impossible between two people who barely knew each other. But somehow, with Lucas, nothing felt forced or awkward. It felt natural, like we'd been having conversations like this for years instead of days. "Okay," I said, deciding to test that theory. "The real Sophie Carter still sleeps with a stuffed elephant named Peanut that she's had since she was 7. She cries during commercials, not just the sad ones, but the really heartwarming ones about dogs finding their way home or grandparents getting surprised by their families. She has strong opinions about pizza toppings and will argue passionately that pineapple belongs nowhere near cheese and tomato sauce. Controversial stance on the pineapple. It's a hill I'm willing to die on." Lucas laughed, and the sound sent a warm flutter through my chest. "What else?" "She talks to her plants. She names them. She has full conversations with them about her day, and apologizes when she forgets to water them. Her neighbors probably think she's losing her mind." "What are their names?" "The plants." I felt my cheeks warm. "There's Jasper. He's a fiddle leaf fig who's very dramatic about lighting conditions. Sage, who's actually sage and lives on my kitchen windowsill. Max, who's a spider plant and has strong opinions about his positioning relative to the air conditioning vent. And the twins, Daisy and Lila, who are matching succulents and seem to communicate telepathically about their watering schedule." You realize that admitting you have full conversations with plants named Daisy and Lila is probably not the best way to impress a potential client. Good thing you're not a potential client anymore. What am I then? The question stopped me in my tracks. Literally, we'd reached a small clearing where the path curved around a pond, and I found myself standing there, looking up at him, trying to figure out how to answer something I didn't understand myself. "I don't know," I admitted. "What do you want to be?" Instead of answering, Lucas reached out and tucked a strand of hair behind my ear that had escaped from my careful morning styling. The gesture was so gentle, so unexpectedly tender, that my breath caught. "I want to know more about Sophie Carter," he said softly. "The version who names plants and cries at commercials and has passionate opinions about pizza. She's not very exciting. She's more interesting than you think." A group of tourists with cameras walked past us, chattering in what sounded like German, completely oblivious to the fact that my entire world had just shifted on its axis because of the way this man was looking at me. "Your turn," I said, needing to break the intensity before I did something embarrassing, like melt into a puddle right there on the walking path. "My turn? Tell me about Lucas Wolfe when he's not terrifying prosecutors and defending people who may or may not have done terrible things." Something flickered across his expression so quickly, I almost missed it. "There's not much to tell." "I don't believe that." "Why not?" "Because nobody gets to be as good at reading people as you obviously are without being a person worth reading themselves." We started walking again, this time toward a bench that overlooked the pond. A family of ducks was gliding across the water, completely unbothered by the city chaos surrounding their little oasis. "I collect first edition books," Lucas said finally as we sat down. "Crime novels, mostly." Which I realize is probably exactly what you'd expect from someone in my profession, but also poetry. I have a weakness for Keats' poetry. Surprised a little, poetry doesn't exactly fit with the whole most feared man at the wedding image. Maybe that's the point. I turned to face him more fully, tucking one leg under me on the bench. "What do you mean?" "People see what they expect to see. They hear criminal defense attorney, and they assume they know everything about me. It's easier to let them make their assumptions than to correct them." "Easier for who?" "For everyone." "That sounds lonely." Lucas was quiet for a long moment, watching the ducks glide across the water. When he spoke again, his voice was softer, more thoughtful. "Do you know why I became a defense attorney? Because you're good at it. Because I believe everyone deserves someone in their corner, even the people, especially the people that everyone else has written off." There was something in the way he said it that made me think there was a story there. A personal one. "Has anyone ever written you off?" He looked at me then. Really looked at me. And I saw something vulnerable flicker in those dark eyes before he shuttered it away. "More times than I care to count. Their loss? How can you say that? You don't know anything about me." "I know enough." "What do you know?" I considered the question seriously, thinking about everything I'd observed since that first night at the wedding. "I know that you could have let me make a fool of myself with Ethan, but instead, You helped a complete stranger. I know that you're intelligent enough to see through whatever professional nonsense I was trying to sell you at lunch, but you played along anyway. I know that you chose to spend your afternoon walking through Central Park with me instead of doing whatever intimidating legal things you probably had scheduled. Maybe I just don't have anything better to do. Lucas Wolfe doesn't strike me as a man who ever lacks for things to do. You're right. I had 3 client calls, 2 depositions, and a partners meeting. And you're here instead because you asked. The simplicity of the answer hit me like a physical blow. Because you asked, as if it could really be that simple. That's not a reason, is it? People don't just abandon their entire Monday afternoon schedule because someone they barely know suggests a walk in the park. I do. Why? Lucas shifted on the bench, turning to face me more directly. Do you really want to know? Yes, because in 15 years of practicing law, I've gotten very good at reading people. I can tell when someone is lying, when they're hiding something, when they're trying to manipulate me or use me or sell me something I don't want. And with you, I can't read anything. I frowned. Is that good or bad? I have no idea. That's what makes it interesting. A jogger passed us, followed by a woman walking 2 small dogs who seemed determined to investigate every single tree along the path. Normal Monday afternoon park activity. Normal people doing normal things while I sat on a bench having the most abnormal conversation of my life. Can I ask you something? I said. Shoot. At the wedding, after we danced, why didn't you ask for my number? Lucas was quiet for so long, I started to wonder if he was going to answer at all. Because I knew that if I had your number, I'd call you, he said finally. And that would be bad, because I'm not the kind of man you should get involved with. Shouldn't I be the judge of that? You don't know what you'd be getting into. I laughed, surprising both of us. Lucas, I just spent the morning researching your firm. I know exactly what cases you take. I know what kind of clients you represent. I know your reputation. Knowing about my work and understanding what it means are 2 different things. Then explain it to me, Sophie. No, seriously, explain it. Help me understand what it means. Lucas ran a hand through his hair, messing up the perfectly styled look he'd started the day with. It made him look younger, more human. It means that my phone rings at 3:00 the morning when someone's son gets arrested. It means I spend my days with people who've made choices you can't imagine. It means that sometimes the person sitting across from me in my office has actually done the things they're accused of, and I defend them anyway because that's how the system works. Okay. That sounds challenging. It sounds like you carry a lot of weight on your shoulders. It sounds like you do difficult work that most people couldn't handle. But none of that tells me why I shouldn't get involved with you. Because the kind of people I associate with professionally aren't the kind of people you want in your orbit. Do you bring work home with you? What? Do your clients come to your apartment for dinner? Do you socialize with them? Do you invite them to weddings and book clubs and Sunday brunch? Of course not. Then, I failed to see the problem. Lucas stared at me like I was a puzzle he couldn't solve. You're not understanding. I'm understanding perfectly. You're afraid that your job makes you unsuitable for dating, but you're conflating your professional life with your personal life. They're separate things. Are they? Aren't they? Sophie, 3 months ago, I got a death threat from the family of a victim in a case I won. 2 weeks before that, someone threw a brick through my office window with a note, calling me a few choice names. I won't repeat. This isn't a job you clock out of at 5 p.m. The information hit me like cold water. Death threats, bricks through windows. I'd known intellectually that his work could be dangerous, but I hadn't really considered what that meant in practical terms. How do you handle that? I asked quietly. Very carefully. No. I mean, how do you handle living with that kind of stress, that kind of potential danger? Lucas looked surprised by the question. You're not running. Should I be? Most people would. I'm not most people. No, he said, and there was something almost wondering in his voice. You're really not. We sat in comfortable silence for a few minutes, watching the ducks navigate around a small group of children who were throwing breadcrumbs into the water despite the signs asking them not to feed the wildlife. Can I tell you something? I said eventually. Anything. I spent 2 years with Ethan being the person he wanted me to be, agreeing with his opinions, laughing at his jokes, wearing the clothes he liked, going to the events he thought were important. I became smaller and smaller until I almost disappeared completely. Why? Because it seemed easier than fighting. Because I thought that's what love was supposed to look like. Compromise and accommodation, and eventually finding a way to fit yourself into someone else's life. And now? Now I think maybe love isn't about becoming smaller. Maybe it's about finding someone who makes you feel bigger. Lucas turned to look at me, his expression serious. Sophie, I'm not saying that's what this is, I said quickly, feeling heat rise in my cheeks. I'm not making some grand declaration after knowing you for 2 weeks and spending one afternoon walking through Central Park. I'm just saying maybe the question isn't whether you're suitable for me. Maybe the question is whether we're good for each other. And how do we figure that out? The same way people have been figuring it out for centuries. We spend time together. We talk. We see what happens. What if what happens is complicated? What if it's not? What if I can't give you what you need? What if you can? Lucas smiled then, the first completely unguarded smile I'd seen from him. It transformed his entire face, erasing the intimidating attorney and revealing something warm and real and utterly devastating. You're very stubborn, he said. I prefer persistent. Same thing, entirely different things. How so? Stubborn is refusing to change your mind, even when presented with new information. Persistent is continuing to pursue something you believe is worth pursuing despite obstacles. And you think this is worth pursuing? I think you are. The words hung between us, bold and honest, and slightly terrifying. I hadn't meant to be quite so direct, but there was something about Lucas that made me want to skip the games and pretense and just tell the truth. Sophie, he said, and my name sounded different in his voice now, warmer, more intimate. Yes? Would you like to have dinner with me? As in a date? As in a date. What happened to all that stuff about not being suitable for dating? I'm choosing to ignore my better judgment. That seems like a healthy decision-making strategy. I'm sure it will end well. I laughed, feeling lighter than I had in weeks, maybe months. When? Tonight. Tonight is Monday. Is that a problem? Normal people don't go on first dates on Monday nights. We've already established that neither of us is normal people. Good point. I pulled out my phone to check my calendar, though I already knew I'd cancel whatever I had planned. What did you have in mind? Somewhere we can talk. Somewhere quiet. My apartment has excellent acoustics for conversation. The offer was out of my mouth before I'd fully thought it through. Inviting him to my apartment on our first official date was either very forward or very stupid, or both. Are you sure? I make exceptional pasta, and you'll get to meet Daisy, Lila, Max, Jasper, and Sage. The plant family, they're very good judges of character. And if they don't approve of me, then I guess you'll have to find a way to win them over. Lucas stood up from the bench and extended his hand to help me up. Challenge accepted. As we walked back toward the park entrance, my hand still in his, I tried to process what had just happened. This morning, I'd been agonizing over an unsent email. This afternoon, I was walking through Central Park with a man who collected poetry and handled death threats with equal composure. Tonight, he was coming to my apartment for dinner. If someone had told me 2 weeks ago that I'd be here, I'd have suggested they seek professional help. Sophie, Lucas said as we reached the street. Yeah? Thank you. For what? For not running when I told you about the death threats. Thank you for telling me. Most people don't want to know the complicated parts. I stopped walking and turned to face him completely. Around us, Manhattan hummed with its usual Monday afternoon energy. Taxis honking. People rushing past with phones pressed to their ears. The constant background noise of a city that never quite settled down. Lucas, I said, I don't want the simplified version of you. I don't want the version that's been edited for mass consumption. If we're going to do this, whatever this is, then I want the real version, complicated parts and all. Something shifted in his expression. Something that looked almost like relief. That might be more than you bargained for. Let me be the judge of that. Okay, he said simply. Okay. Sophie Carter, you get the real version. He leaned down and kissed my cheek. Just a soft brush of lips that lasted maybe 2 seconds but somehow rewrote every expectation I had about how this day was going to end. I'll see you at 7, he said, already stepping toward the curb to hail a taxi. You don't know where I live. Text me the address. A cab pulled up immediately because, of course, it did for him, and he paused with his hand on the door handle. Sophie, yeah. Thank your friend Chloe for making that phone call. Then he was gone, leaving me standing on the sidewalk with my heart racing and the sudden realization that I had exactly 4 hours to prepare dinner for a man who collected first edition Keats and faced down death threats like they were minor inconveniences. This was either going to be the best decision I'd ever made or a complete disaster, possibly both. I pulled out my phone to text Chloe. Emergency grocery shopping required. He's coming for dinner. Her response was immediate. Details now. But as I walked toward the nearest subway entrance, I found myself smiling. For the first time in a very long time, I was about to find out what happened when I stopped playing it safe and started playing for keeps. Monday evening, Sophie's apartment, Upper West Side, at 6:47 p.m. I was standing in my kitchen, wearing my third outfit of the evening, stirring a pot of homemade marinara sauce that I'd somehow managed not to burn. Despite having changed clothes twice in the middle of cooking, my apartment smelled like garlic, basil, and the vanilla candles I'd lit in a moment of panic when I realized that somewhere we can talk might also mean somewhere we might do things other than talk. Not that I was thinking about things other than talk. Okay. I was definitely thinking about things other than talk. My phone buzzed on the counter. Chloe, for the 7th time in 2 hours. Status report. I typed back. Sauce is perfect. Outfit is questionable. Panic level is moderate to severe. What's wrong with the outfit? I looked down at myself. I'd started with a casual sundress, too casual, then switched to jeans and a nice blouse, too casual. Now I was wearing a soft gray sweater and dark jeans that Chloe always said made my legs look amazing. But I couldn't decide if legs looking amazing was the vibe I was going for on a first date with a man who'd been perfectly clear about being complicated. It either says I'm trying too hard or I'm not trying hard enough, and I can't figure out which. Sophie, breathe. You look gorgeous in everything. Plus, he's already interested enough to cancel actual work to spend the afternoon with you. The outfit is not going to make or break this. She was right, of course, but rationality had left the building somewhere around the time I'd realized I was about to have dinner alone in my apartment with Lucas Wolf. "Mi buzzerong, he's here," I texted Chloe, then immediately put my phone face down on the counter because I knew she was going to respond with something encouraging but embarrassing, and I didn't have the emotional bandwidth to deal with whatever emoji-filled pep talk she was crafting. I pressed the intercom button with slightly shaking hands. "Yes? It's Lucas." Even through the crackly building intercom, his voice did things to my nervous system that probably violated several laws of physics. "Come up, 4th floor, apartment 4B. I buzzed him in and immediately went into full panic mode. Was the apartment clean enough? Did I have wine? Should I have gotten wine? Was it weird that I'd lit candles? Should I blow out the candles? Were the candles too much? Not enough? I was in the middle of an internal debate about whether having 3 candles lit suggested romantic dinner or potential fire hazard when there was a knock at my door. Through the peephole, I could see Lucas standing in my hallway, still in his suit from earlier, but with his tie gone and his shirt open at the collar. He was holding a bottle of wine in one hand and what looked like a small paper bag in the other. I took a deep breath, checked my reflection one more time in the mirror by the door, and opened it. "Hi," I said, suddenly feeling shy in a way that was completely ridiculous considering we'd spent the entire afternoon together. "Hi." His eyes did a quick sweep of my apartment behind me, taking in what I could only imagine was a space that looked nothing like what he'd expected. "These are for you." He handed me the paper bag, which turned out to contain a small potted orchid with delicate white blooms. "For the plant family," he said, looking almost embarrassed. "The florist said orchids are good for people who talk to their plants because they're responsive to attention." I stared down at the orchid, then back up at him, feeling something warm and dangerous unfurl in my chest. "You bought a plant for my plant family. Is that weird? It's perfect." I stepped back to let him into the apartment. "She's beautiful. What should we name her?" Well, you picked her out. You should have input on the name." Lucas followed me into the living room, looking around with undisguised curiosity. My apartment was small but bright, with exposed brick walls, hardwood floors that creaked in all the right places, and windows that faced west. So the whole space glowed golden during sunset. I decorated it with things I actually loved rather than things that looked impressive. Vintage books, framed photos of friends and family, artwork from local artists whose stuff I'd fallen in love with at street fairs. It was the opposite of Ethan's sleek, minimalist condo, where everything had been chosen for maximum impact and nothing had personality. "This is really nice," Lucas said, and something in his voice suggested he meant it. "Thanks. It's not much, but it's home. It feels like you. Is that good or bad?" "It's perfect." I led him to the kitchen, which was really just one corner of the main living space, separated by a breakfast bar that I decorated with trailing pothos plants and a small herb garden. "So, these are the famous roommates," Lucas said, approaching the windowsill, where Max, Jasper, Sage, Daisy, and Lila were arranged in order of height. "Don't let Max fool you with the innocent look," I said, setting the orchid down next to them. "He's the troublemaker of the group, very demanding about his light requirements." Lucas leaned closer to examine Max, who was indeed looking particularly lush and dramatic in the early evening light. "Max," he said seriously, "it's nice to meet you. I promise to treat Sophie with the respect she deserves." I laughed. Partly from nerves, and partly because watching this intimidating attorney have a formal introduction with my spider plant was possibly the most charming thing I'd ever witnessed. "What about the new addition?" he asked, gesturing to the orchid. I studied the delicate white flowers, thinking, she looks like a lily to me. Lily it is. Lily, meet the family. Family, meet Lily. Lily, this is Lucas, who has excellent taste in plants and questionable judgment in dinner companions. Hey, what? You're the one who said yes to homemade pasta from someone you've known for 2 weeks. I'm the one who got lucky enough to be invited for homemade pasta by someone I've known for 2 weeks. The way he said it, warm and sincere, made my cheeks heat up in a way that had nothing to do with the steam rising from the pasta pot. "Wine?" I asked, partly to have something to do with my hands and partly because I thought a glass of something might calm my nerves. "Please." He handed me the bottle he'd brought, a Chianti that probably cost more than I typically spent on groceries in a week, and I busied myself with opening it while he continued his examination of my living space. "You read a lot," he observed, running his finger along the spines of the books that lined my built-in shelves. "Occupational hazard of being an English major. Plus, I like stories." "What kind of stories?" I handed him a glass of wine and considered the question. "All kinds, really. Fiction, biographies, the occasional self-help book, when I'm feeling particularly ambitious about personal growth. What about you?" "Besides the first edition crime novels and poetry, history. Mostly military history. Political biographies. I like understanding how people make decisions under pressure." "That makes sense. Given your job, does it bother you, my job?" The question was casual, but I could hear the weight behind it. How many people had made him feel like he needed to apologize for the work he did? Should it? Some people think it does. I leaned against the kitchen counter, wine glass in hand, and really looked at him. He'd relaxed since this afternoon. His shoulders weren't quite so rigid. His expression wasn't quite so guarded, but I could still see the careful way he was watching me, like he was waiting for me to decide he wasn't worth the complication. "Lucas," I said, "can I ask you something? Anything? Why did you become a criminal defense attorney? You mentioned earlier that you believe everyone deserves someone in their corner, but there had to be more to it than that. It's not exactly a career path most people stumble into accidentally." He was quiet for a long moment, swirling the wine in his glass. When he looked up, there was something vulnerable in his expression that made my chest tighten. "When I was 16, my older brother Nathan got arrested for armed robbery." I set down my wine glass, giving him my full attention. He was 18, just graduated high school, had a full scholarship to study engineering at NYU, but he got mixed up with some guys from the neighborhood who convinced him that one job would solve all our family's financial problems. What happened? He got caught, and because he was 18, and because he was black, and because we couldn't afford a good lawyer, he got 15 years. Oh, Lucas, the public defender assigned to his case spent maybe 20 minutes total preparing for trial. 20 minutes to defend my brother's entire future. Nathan tried to tell them he was just the lookout, that he never even touched the gun, but nobody listened, or nobody cared enough to make it matter. I could hear the pain in his voice, carefully controlled but still raw after all these years. He got out after 12 years. Good behavior. But by then Lucas shrugged, a gesture that tried to be casual and failed completely. 12 years in the system changes a person. The brother I grew up with, the one who helped me with my math homework and taught me to throw a curveball, he didn't come home. I'm so sorry. The worst part was knowing that if we'd had money, if we'd been able to hire someone who actually gave a damn about the case, things might have been different. Maybe Nathan would have gotten a lighter sentence. Maybe he would have gotten probation. Maybe he would have finished college and become the engineer he'd always wanted to be. So, you decided to become the lawyer you wished your brother had. I decided that nobody else should have to watch their family get destroyed because they couldn't afford justice. The timer on my stove went off, indicating that the pasta was ready, but I ignored it for the moment. This felt more important than dinner. "That's not why most people go into criminal defense," I said softly. "Most people go into criminal defense because it pays well and because high-profile cases get you on television. I went into it because I was angry, and because I wanted to make sure that when some kid's life was on the line, they'd have someone in that courtroom who would fight like their life depended on it. Because it does. Because it does. I turned to deal with the pasta, partly because it needed attention and partly because I needed a moment to process what he'd just shared with me. It explained so much: the intensity, the reputation, the way other lawyers seemed to both respect and fear him. He wasn't just doing a job, he was carrying out a mission. "How is Nathan now?" I asked as I drained the pasta. "Better. It took a few years after he got out, but he's better. He's married now, has 2 kids, works construction, owns his own company. Do you see him much?" Every Sunday, family dinner at my mom's place in Brooklyn. The image of Lucas Wolfe sitting around a family dinner table, probably being fussed over by his mother and teaching his nephews how to throw curveballs. He was so at odds with his intimidating professional persona that it made me smile. "What?" he asked, noticing my expression. "I'm just trying to picture you at Sunday family dinner." "What's hard to picture about that?" "Nothing. It's just nice. It makes you seem more human." "As opposed to what?" "As opposed to the legal legend who gives prosecutors nightmares." Lucas laughed. "My mom would probably appreciate that description. She's always telling people her son is a big-shot lawyer, conveniently leaving out the part where most of those big shots think I'm a necessary evil at best." I plated the pasta penne with the marinara I'd been simmering, fresh basil from Sage's neighbors on the windowsill, and Parmesan that I'd splurged on from the good Italian market in Little Italy. "Well," I said, handing him a plate, "for what it's worth, I think what you do is important, and I think your brother is lucky to have someone who loves him enough to dedicate his entire career to making sure other people don't go through what your family did." Lucas took the plate, but didn't immediately start eating. Instead, he looked at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "What?" I asked. "Most people, when I tell them that story, they get uncomfortable. They start talking about how the system isn't perfect, but it's the best we have, or how I shouldn't let one bad experience color my entire perspective. Those people are idiots, are they?" "Lucas, you turned personal tragedy into a career spent protecting other people. That's not letting one bad experience color your perspective. That's taking your pain and using it to prevent other people from experiencing the same pain. That's—" I paused, looking for the right words. "That's heroic." "I'm not a hero, Sophie." "Why not?" "Heroes don't charge $600 an hour. Heroes have to eat, too." We moved to my small dining table, really just a table for 2 squeezed into the space between the kitchen and the living room, and for a few minutes, we ate in comfortable silence. The pasta was actually pretty good, if I did say so myself, and the wine Lucas had brought was definitely better than anything I kept in my apartment. "This is delicious," he said after a few bites. "Don't sound so surprised." "I'm not surprised. I'm impressed." "What's the difference?" "Surprised would mean I had no expectations. Impressed means you exceeded expectations I didn't realize I had." I twirled pasta around my fork. "Considering that, what expectations did you have?" "Honestly, always. I expected you to be exactly what you seemed like at the wedding. Beautiful, charming, probably a little spoiled. The kind of woman who looks great on paper but doesn't have much depth beyond the surface." "Wow, thanks. I was wrong." "About which part?" "All of it." "Well, not the beautiful and charming parts. You're definitely both of those things. But everything else, I'm not spoiled. You're genuine. There's a difference." "Explain." Lucas set down his fork and looked at me across the small table. In the candlelight, his features were softer, less intimidating, more approachable. Spoiled people take things for granted. They expect the world to arrange itself around their comfort. You. He paused, seeming to choose his words carefully. "You notice things. You pay attention to people. You bought me lunch today, even though I was basically a stranger. And you did it because you wanted to, not because you expected anything in return." "How do you know I didn't expect anything in return?" "Because when I told you about the death threats and the broken windows, you didn't run. Someone who was with me for what they could get would have run. Maybe I'm just not very bright. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met." The statement hung in the air between us, honest and a little raw. I felt my cheeks warm again, but this time it wasn't from embarrassment. "You don't know me well enough to make that assessment, don't I? We've known each other for 2 weeks. And we've spent maybe 6 hours total in each other's company. Quality over quantity. That's a nice philosophy. But," Sophie. He reached across the table and covered my hand with his, "Do you know what I did during those depositions I skipped this afternoon? I assume you rescheduled them. I sat in my office thinking about the way you laughed when you told me about your plants and the way you looked when you were explaining your marketing ideas. Like you were sharing something you really cared about, instead of just trying to make a sale. And the way you didn't flinch when I told you about my brother." His thumb was tracing small circles on the back of my hand, and it was making it very difficult to concentrate on the conversation. "Those are just moments," I said weakly. "The best things are made of moments." That sounds like something you read in a fortune cookie. It sounds like something I realized sitting in my office thinking about you, instead of doing my job. I stared down at our joined hands, trying to process the fact that this morning I'd been agonizing over an unsent email, and now Lucas Wolf was sitting in my apartment, telling me he'd spent the afternoon thinking about me instead of working. "This is moving kind of fast," I said quietly. "Is that a problem?" "I don't know. Maybe. I spent 2 years with Ethan moving at the pace of continental drift, and look how that turned out." "And how did it turn out?" "I almost married someone I didn't even like very much." Lucas was quiet for a moment, his thumb still tracing those maddening circles on my hand. "Do you like me?" he asked finally. The question was simple, but the way he asked it, like my answer actually mattered to him, made it feel like the most important question anyone had ever asked me. "Yes," I said, "I like you, even though I'm complicated." "Because you're complicated. That doesn't make sense." "Sure it does. Simple people are boring. They don't challenge you or make you think or push you to be better than you are. And you think I do those things?" I looked up at him, meeting his dark eyes across the small table. "I think you've made me braver in the past 2 weeks than I was in 2 years with Ethan." "How?" "I called your office." "Well, technically Chloe called your office, but I didn't stop her. I had lunch with you. I asked you to leave the restaurant and walk through Central Park with me. I invited you to my apartment for dinner. Those don't seem like particularly brave acts." "They are for me." The old Sophie would have agonized over that email for weeks and then probably never sent it. She would have suffered through lunch making polite conversation about safe topics. She would have gone home alone and spent the evening wondering what might have happened if she'd been braver. And the new Sophie? The new Sophie is sitting here having dinner with a man who collects poetry and fights for people everyone else has given up on. And she's not scared of what might happen next. What do you think might happen next? The question was loaded with possibility, and we both knew it. I could feel the shift in the air between us, the way the conversation had moved from getting to know you dinner, talk to something more intimate, more charged. "I don't know," I said honestly, "but I'm interested in finding out." Lucas's grip on my hand tightened slightly. "Sophie?" "Yes?" "I want to be clear about something." "Okay. If we do this, if we see where this goes, it's not going to be simple. My life isn't simple. My work isn't simple. The people I deal with aren't simple. I understand. Do you? Because it's one thing to say you understand when we're sitting in your apartment eating dinner, and it's another thing to deal with the reality of dating someone who gets death threats." I pulled my hand free from his and stood up, suddenly needing space to think. I walked to the window that overlooked the street, watching the ordinary Monday evening activities of my neighborhood. People walking dogs, couples coming home from work, someone across the street watering plants on their fire escape. "Can I ask you something?" I said without turning around. "Always. Are you trying to scare me away?" "I'm trying to be honest with you." "Are you? Or are you trying to give me reasons to run so you don't have to risk getting hurt?" Silence behind me. When I turned around, Lucas was still sitting at the table, but his expression had changed. Less open, more guarded. "That's not what I'm doing. Isn't it, Lucas? Because it seems like every time we get close to something real, you bring up all the reasons why it won't work. Your job, your clients, your complicated life. But what if those aren't reasons? What if those are just excuses? Excuses for what? For not having to admit that you might actually want this as much as I do." The words hung in the air between us, honest and a little dangerous. I hadn't meant to be quite so direct, but something about Lucas made me want to skip past all the games and pretense and just tell the truth. "You think I don't want this? I think you're scared of what I'm scared of," I said, walking back to the table but staying standing, looking down at him. Of finding out that this could be something really important, Lucas stood up too, and suddenly we were very close together in my small dining space, close enough that I could smell his cologne again, could see the flecks of gold in his dark eyes. "Sophie," he said softly, "if this is something really important, then you deserve to know what you're getting into. Then tell me, not the scary stuff you think will make me run away, but the real stuff, the stuff that matters. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with something small. He smiled at that, the tension in his shoulders easing slightly. Something small. I hate coffee. Can't stand the stuff, but I drink it anyway, because everyone expects lawyers to run on caffeine, and I don't want to be the guy ordering hot chocolate in important meetings. I laughed. Hot chocolate with marshmallows, if possible. That's actually adorable. Don't tell anyone. It would ruin my reputation. Your secret is safe with me. What else? I'm terrified of horror movies. Not just scared. Terrified. I made the mistake of watching The Shining when I was 12, and I still can't stay in hotels with long hallways. Good to know. No Stephen King movie marathons. Definitely not. What else? Lucas was quiet for a moment, considering. I've never brought anyone home to meet my family, he said finally. Never? Never. My mom asks about my love life every Sunday dinner, and I change the subject every Sunday dinner. Why? Because bringing someone home makes it real, and making it real means risking having it end badly, and you don't like taking risks. In court, I take risks all the time. With my heart? That's different. I reached up and touched his face, running my thumb along the small scar on his jawline that I'd noticed at the wedding. How did you get this? Bar fight. In law school, you got in a bar fight? Someone was harassing a waitress. She was maybe 19, clearly scared, and this guy was drunk and grabby and wouldn't take no for an answer. So, you intervened. So, I got a broken bottle across the face and learned that being right doesn't always mean you win the fight. But you'd do it again. It wasn't a question. In a heartbeat, I traced the scar again, thinking about everything he'd told me. The brother who'd been failed by the system, the career built on protecting people who needed protecting, the willingness to get hurt standing up for someone he didn't even know. Lucas, I said, I'm not scared of your complicated life. You should be. Maybe. But I'm not. Why not? Because complicated doesn't mean bad. Complicated just means worth figuring out. He caught my hand, the one that had been tracing his scar, and pressed it flat against his chest. I could feel his heart beating, steady and strong. Sophie, he said, I need you to understand something. What? If we do this, I'm all in. I don't do casual. I don't do temporary. I don't do halfway. Good. Good? I spent 2 years doing halfway with Ethan. I'm done with halfway. Something shifted in Lucas's expression, then something that looked like relief, mixed with anticipation, mixed with something else I couldn't quite identify. So what happens now? He asked. Now we stop talking about all the reasons why this might not work and start finding out whether it does work. And how do we do that? Instead of answering, I stood on my toes and kissed him. It was supposed to be a simple kiss, just a soft brush of lips to seal whatever agreement we'd just made. But the moment our mouths touched, something ignited. His arms came around me immediately, pulling me closer. And I felt that careful control he always maintained slip just enough to let me see the man underneath the lawyer. When we finally broke apart, we were both breathing a little harder. So, I said, trying to sound casual despite the fact that my knees had apparently forgotten how to support my weight. Was that a good start to finding out whether this works? That, Lucas said, his forehead resting against mine, was a very good start. Just good, Sophie? Yes. Stop fishing for compliments and kiss me again. So I did. And this time I stopped thinking about whether it was smart or safe or sensible and just let myself fall. 3 months later, Sophie's apartment, a Sunday morning in late October, I woke up to the smell of coffee brewing and the sound of Lucas's voice drifting from the kitchen, low and amused, clearly having a conversation with someone who couldn't talk back. I know, Max. But she's not going to be happy if you keep drooping like that, just because you don't like your new spot. He was saying, the light is exactly the same here as it was by the other window. You're being dramatic. I smiled into my pillow, listening to my boyfriend have what sounded like a very serious discussion with my spider plant about his recent relocation. My apartment had become something entirely different in the past 3 months, not just because of the plants that had multiplied, but because of the way it had expanded to accommodate 2 lives instead of 1. Good morning, Lily, Lucas continued, and I could picture him checking on the orchid he'd brought me on our first real date. Looking lovely as always. I stretched, enjoying the lazy Sunday morning feeling. Sundays had become sacred. No work calls, no client emergencies, no depositions or court dates, Just us and coffee and whatever we felt like doing. Well, mostly just us. Today was different. Today I was meeting his family. Sophie? Lucas's voice interrupted my thoughts. You awake in there? Barely, I called back. What time is it? 8:30. I made coffee and pancakes. Pancakes? That got me out of bed. Lucas's pancakes were legendary. A recipe he'd learned from his mother. I found him in the kitchen wearing jeans and a gray Henley, standing at the stove with a spatula in one hand and his phone in the other. Please tell me you're not dealing with work stuff on a Sunday morning, I said, wrapping my arms around his waist from behind. I'm not dealing with work stuff, he said, chuckling. I'm dealing with family stuff, which is arguably more stressful. What kind of family stuff? My mother wants to know what kind of wine you like, whether you have any food allergies, and what your intentions are regarding her son. I groaned against his back. She asked about my intentions. She asked about my intentions regarding you. Actually, and what did you tell her? Lucas turned in my arms, sliding his hands around my waist. His dark hair was messy from sleep, and he had a small smudge of flour on his cheek. I told her that my intentions were to convince you to keep me around for as long as possible. Just keep you around? Maybe a little more than that. How much more? Instead of answering, he leaned down and kissed me, soft and sweet and tasting like coffee and vanilla. Good morning, he murmured against my lips. Very good morning. Nervous about today? Terrified, I admitted. What if they don't like me? They're going to love you. How can you be so sure? Because I love you. The words hung in the air between us. Simple and honest and completely unexpected. We stared at each other for a moment, and I realized he looked just as surprised as I felt. You love me? I whispered. Yeah, he said, his voice soft and wondering. I really do. Good, I said, standing on my toes to kiss him again. Because I love you too. When we finally broke apart, both of us were smiling. So, I said, good intentions all around. Then, the best intentions. The trip to Brooklyn gave me plenty of time to work myself into a state of nervous excitement, but it also gave me time to watch Lucas transform as we got closer to his childhood neighborhood. His posture relaxed, his expression softened. That's where Nathan and I used to buy candy with our allowance money, he said, pointing to a small bodega. And that's the park where I learned to play basketball. We turned onto a tree-lined street of brownstones, each one well-loved, rather than just buildings. This is it, Lucas said, stopping in front of a brownstone with a bright red door and overflowing flower boxes. Before we could knock, the door opened, and a woman who was clearly Lucas's mother appeared. She was small but had the kind of presence that filled a room. Dark hair streaked with silver, warm brown eyes, and a smile that was both welcoming and assessing. Mijo, she said, pulling Lucas into a rib-crushing hug. You're late. 5 minutes, Mama. 5 minutes is late. She turned to me. And you must be Sophie. Yes, ma'am. It's so nice to meet you, Mrs. Wolfe. Isabel, and come here. Before I knew what was happening, I was being pulled into the same crushing hug. She smelled like cinnamon and vanilla. Welcome to our home, she said. Lucas has told us so much about you. Lucas's father appeared, tall and broad-shouldered, with kind eyes behind wire-rimmed glasses. Sophie, this is my father, Antonio. It's lovely to meet you, sir. Antonio, please, and welcome. The brownstone felt lived in and loved, with family photos covering every surface and everything arranged for comfort rather than show. The family is in the kitchen, Isabel said, leading us down a hallway. Everyone wanted to meet you. The kitchen was clearly the heart of the home, with a large table and counters covered with food. The room was full of people, and the kind of organized chaos that comes from a family that's been cooking together for decades. Everyone, Isabel announced. This is Sophie. Suddenly, I was the center of attention for what felt like a dozen pairs of eyes. I recognized Nathan from photos, taller than Lucas, with the same dark eyes and easy smile. The woman next to him was Maria, and the two kids peeking around her legs were Gabriel and Isabella. Sophie, Isabella, the 5-year-old, broke free and ran directly to me. Do you really talk to plants? Isabella, we don't run at guests, Maria said, looking embarrassed. It's okay, I said, crouching down to Isabella's level. And yes, I do talk to plants. They're very good listeners. Do they talk back? Not in words, but they have their own ways of communicating. Isabella considered this seriously. That makes sense. I talk to my stuffed animals. And do they listen? Very carefully. I was immediately charmed by this miniature version of Lucas's earnestness. The introductions continued. Carmen. Lucas's sister, Diego, his cousin, with a very young girlfriend, and finally the matriarch. "And this is my mother," Isabel said, leading me to an older woman at the stove. "Mama, this is Sophie." Lucas's grandmother looked up and fixed me with a stare that felt like it could see straight through to my soul. She was tiny but had the kind of presence that made her seem much larger. "Abuela," Lucas said, "esta es Sophie." She said something in rapid Spanish. They had a brief conversation before she nodded and smiled. "She says you're prettier than she expected," Lucas translated. "What did she expect?" "She doesn't say." Dinner was overwhelming in the best possible way. The table was packed with food, and the conversation flowed in multiple languages, covering everything from Gabriel's soccer game to Carmen's neighbor drama. I was seated between Lucas and Isabella, who had decided I was her new best friend and kept up a steady stream of chatter about kindergarten and her pet fish. "Sophie," Isabel said during a brief lull, "Lucas tells us you own your own business." "Yes, ma'am. I run a marketing consultancy." I found myself relaxing as I talked about something I was passionate about. The family listened with genuine interest, and I noticed how they'd suddenly shifted to include me in their discussions, asking my opinion, referencing stories I'd shared. About halfway through dinner, Isabella tugged on my sleeve. "Sophie, do you want kids someday?" The innocent question made every adult conversation stop. "Isabella," Maria said quickly, "that's not polite to ask someone you just met." "It's okay," I said, looking at Isabella's earnest face. "Yes, I do want kids someday. Do you think I'd be good with them?" "You're good with plants, and they're harder than kids," Isabella said seriously. "Kids can tell you what they need." Everyone laughed, and the tension broke. After dinner, I found myself alone in the kitchen with Lucas's grandmother, helping her wash dishes. "You make him happy," she said in careful, accented English. I looked at her in surprise. "Thank you. He makes me happy too." "Good. He needs someone who makes him happy. He's a wonderful man." "Yes, but difficult sometimes. Stubborn." She handed me a plate to dry. "Like his abuelo, his grandfather, my husband. Very stubborn man. Very good man." She paused. "Lucas, he carries too much. Like his abuelo." I thought about what she was trying to tell me. "You think he takes on too much responsibility?" "See, always trying to fix everything. Help everyone is good." But she tapped her chest. "Heart gets tired." "Yes, I can see that. You help with that. Make the heart less tired." "I try." She nodded approvingly. "You stay. You make him better." Before I could respond, Lucas appeared. "Abuela, are you interrogating Sophie?" His grandmother said something in Spanish that made him laugh. "What did she say?" I asked. "She said I should marry you before you figure out you're too good for me." My cheeks heated up. "Lucas, don't worry." I told her, "We're taking things one day at a time." "And what did she say to that?" "She said, 1 day at a time is for people who don't know what they want." We looked at each other, and I felt that familiar flutter of possibility mixed with certainty. "Do you know what you want?" I asked quietly. "Yeah," he said, stepping closer. "I do." "What?" "You?" "This. All of it." The evening continued with charades, a competitive family affair that had everyone laughing and shouting out increasingly ridiculous guesses. By the time we called it quits, my cheeks hurt from laughing, and I felt like I'd been part of this family for years. "We should head home," Lucas said eventually. The round of goodbyes took forever, with everyone insisting on hugs and Isabel packing enough leftovers to feed us for a week. "You come back next Sunday," she said firmly. "I'd love to. If you'll have me, we'll have you," Antonio said warmly. "You're family now." The simple statement hit me hard. "Family." "Thank you," I said, hoping my voice didn't betray how emotional I felt. "All of you. This was wonderful." On the subway ride home, I leaned against Lucas's shoulder. "So," he said, "what's the verdict?" "Your family is amazing. Even when Isabella interrogated you about your reproductive plans?" "Especially then." I shifted to look at him properly. "Lucas, your grandmother told me something interesting." "Oh, no." "What?" "She said you carry too much, like your grandfather did." Lucas was quiet, his arm tightening around me. "She's not wrong," he said finally. "Do you want to talk about it?" "Sometimes I feel like I'm carrying the weight of every client who doesn't get justice, every case I lose, and I know that's not realistic. But you can't help feeling responsible." "Yeah. What would help you accept that you can't save everyone?" He was quiet for a long time. "You," he said finally. "Me? Having someone who reminds me that I'm more than just my work, Someone who makes me want to come home instead of staying at the office until I collapse. I can do that. You already do that. Back at my apartment, we climbed the stairs in comfortable silence. Sophie, Lucas said, as we reached my door. Thank you for today, for loving my crazy family. I stopped and turned to face him. Lucas, I need to tell you something. What? I'm not just falling in love with you anymore. I've already fallen completely. His face went still. Sophie, he said finally. Yes? I bought a ring last week. The words hit me like a physical blow. You what? I bought a ring. It's sitting in my sock drawer because I was trying to figure out the right time to ask you, and I was worried 3 months wasn't long enough. You want to marry me? I want to marry you, buy a house with you, have babies with you. I want to bring you to Sunday dinners for the rest of my life. Are you proposing to me in the hallway of my apartment building? I'm telling you that I love you more than I thought possible, and if you want me to go get that ring right now, I will. I looked at this extraordinary man who was brave enough to love me with his whole heart. Yes. I said, yes. What? Yes. Go get the ring. Yes. I want to marry you. Yes to all of it. Lucas's face broke into the biggest smile I'd ever seen from him. Are you sure? I've never been more sure of anything. He kissed me then, with the kind of intensity that made my knees weak. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. I love you, Sophie Carter. I love you too, Lucas Wolfe. Ready to go get that ring? Ready? As we climbed the rest of the stairs, I thought about the journey that had brought us here. From that desperate moment at Ava's wedding, when I'd grabbed him as a shield against my past, to this moment when he was my future, my choice, my home. 4 months ago, I'd walked up to a stranger and asked him to be my fake boyfriend for 5 minutes. Now, he was about to become my real fiancé for the rest of my life. Lucas, I said as he opened the door. Yeah? When you propose in about 10 minutes, can you do it properly, down on one knee and everything? You want the full traditional proposal? I want everything. We have time. We have all the time in the world, he said. And as we walked into our future together, I realized that for the first time in my life, I knew exactly where I belonged. Right here, with him, always.